Hello and welcome to the 2025 International Partnering Forum Call for Workshops webinar. I'm Renee Lewis, Group Vice President of Events for the Oceantic Network. I will be one of your hosts today. Joining me is my colleague Carly Milligan, Senior Writer and Content Developer. In today's webinar, we will provide an overview of the Call for Workshops process, including benefits of speaking at IPF, how to make a submission, best practices for success, how the review process works, expectations and next steps should your workshop be accepted as well. We will record this webinar and it will be available on demand through our 2025 IPF website. At the end, we'll include a 5-minute Q&A, so please pop your questions into the chat or the Q&A function throughout the webinar. Let's get started. The International Partnering Forum, or IPF, is the largest offshore wind ocean renewables conference in the Americas. Hosted by us, the Oceantic Network, IPF is where industry experts from around the world come together to transform the industry through collaboration and innovation. 2025 IPF Week will take place April 28th to May 1st in Virginia Beach at the Virginia Beach Convention Center. We'll talk later in this webinar about pricing and when and how to register. The Call for Workshops is the primary way to identify programming and educational content for IPF. This is your best opportunity to secure a speaking role at the conference. Speakers at IPF have the chance to showcase their expertise, expand their professional network, and gain recognition among industry peers. Consider this your company's opportunity to define its role in the industry. Workshops at IPF will cover a range of topics, but overall support the growth of the industry and its supply chain. Workshops are typically proposed as panel discussions. However, we encourage submitters to get creative, submit as a presentation, a facilitated discussion, or any style you believe will be effective for conveying your information to attendees. Workshops typically run for 60 minutes. However, during the review process, Oceantic Network may request to shorten your proposal to fit the needs of our agenda. Critical dates to note through the Call for Workshops process include registration will open the week of September 30th. As you know, or you probably know, submissions opened for workshops August 6th and will close on November 1st. Our review period is November 2nd through December 6th, and we will notify accepted authors in mid to late December. All accepted panelists must confirm they will be presenting at IPF by January 10th. Now I'm going to turn things over to Carly to talk more in depth about how to craft a strong submission.
Thank you, Renee, and hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. As you can see on the screen, we are seeking submissions across a range of topics. Many of these may be familiar to past attendees, but I want to quickly highlight two that may not be immediately clear. The first is stakeholder engagement, seen on the bottom left. This is how different work groups work together. Some examples might be fisheries management, working with local communities, building bipartisan support for offshore wind, or addressing myths and disinformation in your communities. The other is ocean renewables. This includes technologies such as floating solar, wave and tidal, battery storage, or even co-location, essentially ocean renewable technology other than offshore wind. Please keep in mind that some workshop submissions may fit under more than one topic. The tracks in this agenda will become tracks in IPF, and each will contain multiple workshops, while some of these topics will become programming for specific conference stages or offsite summits. So let's go a little bit deeper to understand the mission of your submission. Keep in mind that your workshop should be more than just a presentation on your company or product. We're looking for you to go beyond the sales pitch to demonstrate your company's role in the larger industry to help it succeed. On the screen are a few examples of how you could structure your workshop. You might consider presenting a case study, using observations, key findings, and lessons for the future using real-world project experience. You might convene key leaders, including government and C-suite executives, to help advance critical industry topics. You could share new technologies and strategies, introduce emerging topics such as cutting-edge research or other innovative information, or present valuable industry data. In that case, we're looking for trends, market analysis, or insights. That last item is a special focus for IPF this year. Oceantic Network is seeking companies that perform market studies or collect other proprietary research to partner with and help enhance this year's conference. If you'd like to discuss that further, please feel free to reach out to me via email. Once you've got your topic and objective in mind, you'll need a couple of things before you're ready to submit. Consider this here your checklist to ensure you're prepared. I'll describe a few of these things in depth shortly, but I want to briefly note that all submissions must have at least 2, but no more than 5 speakers, including a moderator if you choose to have one. One notable change this year is that we are no longer requiring speaker headshots at the submission stage. We will only request them if your workshop is selected. Once you have your materials in hand, you're ready to submit your workshop through the CVent portal. You will need to create an account in order to submit your workshop. The name that you provide when you create your account will auto-populate as the first speaker for your workshop submission. Therefore, if you are submitting on behalf of a speaker, please create the account using their name and information. During the submission process, you'll have the opportunity to identify a primary point of contact for the workshop, and if you'd like communications to go through someone other than the speaker. Keep in mind you will continue to use this account to access your submissions, modify them if you choose, and/or withdraw. We're going to put a link to the portal in the chat, and you can also find it on our 2025 IPF website. As you go through the submission process, you'll be asked to agree to a few terms seen here on the screen. Those include that the network reserves the right to alter workshop submissions as needed leading up to IPF and has the final say on all content and speakers. Please also note that by submitting a workshop, you agree to grant the network permission to record, publish, and distribute your presentation. These recordings are shared with registered IPF attendees and primarily used as a member benefit and incorporated into network trainings. Now I'm going to do a quick walkthrough example of a submission using a workshop from last year's conference. On the left side of the screen, you'll see the initial forms for providing your information. The title, in this case, Innovations in Substations, and the description form. In this box, you'll want to give some industry context. In this case, we're explaining that more demand for offshore wind means a greater need for substations that can transmit even more power. You'll also want to note things like a reason for importance. Seen here, we're explaining that new innovations in substations can help reduce cost and risk for projects. And you'll also want to let us know what we'll hear from your presentation. That includes here information about new technologies and approaches with a few examples. Below that, you'll have the opportunity to select proposed tracks for your workshop. Again, it may be appropriate to select more than one track. On the right, you'll move on to the learner outcomes section. Here you are to provide 3 learner outcomes. This is a bit different than the description. The idea is to go more in depth and give a simple bulleted list overview of what attendees will leave knowing after your presentation. Below that, you can identify the format. Most often, this is a panel discussion, but as Renee said earlier, we encourage you to get creative. You can present a report, you could have a facilitated conversation, or even some kind of true workshop where you're digging into details. Below that, you'll identify your target audiences, such as developers, suppliers, grid operators, engineers, to name a few, and let us know if you've presented this workshop at another conference previously. Once you've provided the initial details of the workshop itself, it's time to input your speaker details. You can see my example here on the left. The first name will be auto-populated with the information and details you provided when creating your account. So again, it's very important to use the speaker's name to create that account, especially if you're submitting on their behalf. Once you've inputted their information, you'll see a Add Co-Speaker button. You'll click that to create this form once again and do that for each speaker in your workshop. Once you've added all the speakers, there's a box to identify who the moderator will be. It's usually one of the people you've already entered above. Then you'll have this list where you can select sectors that your workshop speakers represent to tell us if they are government speakers, industry speakers, or a mix. And finally, please identify whether you suspect one of your speakers will need a discount to registration. This typically applies only to academic or government speakers. The world is your oyster when developing your workshop concept. So we want to see you get creative and use your in-house knowledge to bring new conversations to the IPF stage. However, there's a couple of best practices to keep in mind to help ensure you get selected. The first and most important is we do not accept late submissions or extensions, so please don't wait until the last day. As a reminder, submissions close on November 1st. As noted, we are not looking for sales pitches, and we do ask that all panels be diverse and inclusive in terms of speakers. You must provide your submission through the CVent platform. We do not accept them via email. And we ask that you incorporate speakers, ideas, products, and services from companies and organizations outside of your own. Remember, think collaboratively is key. Finally, the maximum number of speakers from the same company is 1. We do ask that you make every effort to notify the panelists and moderators of their inclusion of your submission. This just helps make sure that they have engagement throughout the process. We recognize that it's not always possible to confirm a speaker's full participation in advance and that speaker changes do occur. If you're unsure about a speaker's participation, or if your workshop is not fully complete at the time of submission, our best guidance is that it's better to submit something than nothing at all. The more information you can provide, the better the IPF program committee can review your submission. Speaking of review, each submission will be reviewed by the IPF program committee and scored on a scale of 1 to 5 for each of the specific criteria. In the chat, you'll find a link to this page of specific criteria, and it's also available on our website and via the CVent submission platform. Oceantic Network will use the scores, as well as internal and external subject matter experts, to make the final selections. For example, as you review submissions, we'll ask questions such as, are the panelists viewed as experts in the industry? Is the panel diverse? And does this topic help the industry advance? Please keep in mind that we do typically give priority to network members and speakers who have not presented at previous IPF conferences. If your workshop is selected, there are a number of things that your speakers will be required to do. The first is sign a speaker agreement and help promote the IPF through your social channels. We also expect you to keep us updated with any changes to your workshop and to attend a panel logistics call prior to the conference. You'll need to submit any presentation materials by the required date, typically just before the conference itself. And you'll also need to purchase a registration to attend and book in one of the network's hotel blocks. I'm going to hand it back to Renee now, who will share more information about registration pricing and hotel options for speakers. And keep in mind, we have a chat if you have any questions throughout this webinar.
Thanks, Carly. And as Carly mentioned, another benefit to having your workshop selected is that all speakers receive a discount on 2025 IPF registration, which will open the week of September 30th. Speakers must book their hotel room within the IPF room block. We have 10 hotels to choose from, which are listed on the screen. Keep in mind that travel and hotel accommodations are at your own expense or at the speaker's expense and not included in the registration fee. Beyond the call for workshops, there are actually several ways to get involved in IPF and the network as a whole. Interested in becoming a member, sponsor, or reserving a booth? Links to reserve a booth and request sponsorship may be found in the chat. All 3 options offer benefits to you and your team as you plan your trip to IPF. Another way you can be involved with IPF is by submitting a poster. The call for posters will open in early December and close in early March. Additional details may be found via the link dropped in the chat. And finally, we have a number of volunteer opportunities available during IPF. Most volunteers assist by scanning attendees into workshops and various events. So as we come to the end of our presentation, just a reminder that we have been recording this webinar. Anyone who registered will receive a copy of the recording automatically. If you have questions, please go ahead and add those questions to the chat and we can answer them. And while we wait, I'm going to bring Carly back up to review some frequently asked questions about the workshop process. So first, let me see, Carly, one question I have, or one we get very often is, can you modify a workshop after it has been submitted?
That's a really good question. Yes, you can. Up until the submission close date, November 1st, you just have to sign back into your CVent account and you can go ahead and make any necessary changes to your submission.
Okay, great. Another common question is, who are workshop submissions open to?
Anybody can make a submission for the IPF call for workshops. So we do encourage you to share the link to the call for workshops page with your personal and professional network and colleagues.
Okay, and so if you don't get accepted for your workshop, how else can I work with the network?
Sure. As you mentioned, there's a couple different ways to get involved. We will have a call for posters opening later this year. That's another session that takes place at IPF. And you could also consider volunteering or just attending in general.
Okay. So trying to see if we have any questions in the chat. There's also a Q&A feature if you haven't dropped your question.
Oh, I see one question in here, Renee.
Okay. All right.
Asking if someone's company has specific rules about what hotels they can and can't stay at.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure, of course. If a company has particular rules or guidelines about hotel stays.
We definitely understand that if your hotel or if your particular company has an agreement with a particular hotel chain, if it happens to be with one of our hotels in the IPF room block, we would ask that you try to make your reservation at least at that hotel. So for instance, if your company has a contract with Hilton and we have the Hilton Garden Inn and the Hampton Inn, which are part of the Hilton brand of families, if you can make your reservation there, we understand a lot of times that you will have to do it with your through your corporate travel agent, but we will go back and make sure that we get credit for it so that we can fulfill our obligation to the hotel. So we definitely understand that.
I see another question here asking about if there will be sponsored luncheon workshops separate from this. Yes, there will be some sponsored luncheons taking place throughout IPF week. As you mentioned, if they're sponsored, they're typically created the content outside of the call for workshops process. So anything submitted to the call for workshops would either end up in one of the primary tracks or perhaps for one of our offsite summits, but not for one of those sponsored luncheons. If you are interested in sponsoring a luncheon, please feel free to email us and we can put you in contact with someone on our business development team to talk to you more about that.
Okay. Any other last minute questions? Please add them to the chat or Q&A.
I'm not seeing anything additional at this time.
Okay. Well, with that, I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you all for attending this webinar. I hope this has provided you with an understanding of this process. Again, this has been recorded and we will share it with you. It will also be on the 2025 IPF website. We appreciate your time and support of IPF and the Oceantic Network and look forward to receiving your submissions that are due November 1st as a reminder. Please feel free to contact us for any assistance at speakers@oceanicevents.org. And we hope to see you in Virginia Beach.
Thanks, everyone.